Welcome to Pique Your Interest, your go-to podcast for all things mortgage and real estate. Hosted by Tanner Greenwald and Tim Velasquez. We bring you expert insights to help you buy, sell, and invest with confidence. Let's dive in.
Welcome back to the podcast. I'm Tim.
And I'm Tanner.
And we are here today to talk to you about the post-closing process. After a loan closes, there's a lot that goes on. And to be fair, this is not really our expertise because we don't really deal with what goes on with a mortgage after the closing. We're more upfront and at closing. But there's enough that's going on that I think it's something that people should know about. So Tanner, what is the most important thing about after a loan closes, do you think?
Well, to us, it is reviewing how we did. So I don't know what you typically do. Anytime I have a client that closes, I have like a drafted email that's already set up, which we're going to go over a lot of what I talk about in the email. Mm-hmm. But number one is to review your loan officer. Yes. It's important because it lets us know how we did, number one, but if we have things to work on as well. We obviously don't want bad reviews, but if you've got something that you think we could have done better, that's a perfect time to say, hey, loved the process. However, this could have been better, or maybe we did great and you want to let us know that we did great. So I think reviewing your loan officer gives us the momentum to keep doing the job, but also, again, it lets us know, what we could be doing better. If we're doing something great, continue to do it. So I think that's important to review us.
No, I think it is too. And I think that anyone that takes this business seriously, treats it like a career, wants honest feedback. And so if there's, I love getting a 5-star review that says, hey, you did a great job. But if I got a 4-star review that said everything was really good, I would like to have seen this instead. That could actually be more helpful moving forward than a 5-star review. So I think honest, candid feedback is something that we're all looking for.
One of the questions I get a lot is about servicing. Is my loan getting serviced? What does that mean? What does that look like? So I guess, fire away what servicing kind of encompasses, Tim.
Yeah, so I think that this could be its own topic maybe one day down the line, but it just real quickly, we at First Home, we close loans, we fund loans in our name, we use our own money, and a lot of times we service the loans that we do. We don't always though. So what happens after a loan closes is, the people that have the power to make those decisions, that's not me and Tanner, but other people have the ability to decide, hey, this loan is worth keeping. We're going to make, X amount of money over the life of the loan or the number of years we expect to have it. It's worth keeping. There are other loans that might be, hey, we're not going to service this one. There isn't as much money in it. It's more valuable to us to sell it and recoup that money up front. And we'll get to that a little bit later, like the difference between the primary and the secondary mortgage markets, but not every, and in fact, I'd say most loans get sold. I'd say probably more than half. I searched incredibly hard for statistics and I could not find anything. Everything was so vague. It was like, yes, it's normal. Yes, most loans get sold, but nothing that was like, oh yeah, 56% of all loans get sold. Nothing like that at all. So it's really hard to talk about, specific numbers. I know we like talking about numbers because we're in a numbers industry, but there wasn't anything very specific about, hey, here's the number of loans that get sold, or here's the percentage of loans that get sold. It just kind of happens. And I think it's hard to track because it probably happens more than once. A loan gets sold this year, and then a couple of years later, the servicer, sells its portfolio to somebody else. You're serviced by somebody else. So to be fair, it's probably hard to track, right? Yeah. It's probably a hard thing to do. But when your loan is sold, you are supposed to be receiving communication. It's mostly in the form of first-class mail. Get something from your old servicer that says we are no longer servicing your loan. We are selling it to, ABC Mortgage. And then ABC Mortgage reaches out to you with a welcome letter that says, hello, we're ABC Mortgage. We would like your money. Here's how you pay us. Here's when your payments are due. And then just, it's important when you receive something like that to just sort of verify that it's right? Yeah. Verify it's real. Yep. So there's a lot of scams out there, and we'll get to that a little bit later on as well. But, one of the first things you need to do is, if you're like most people, everything's automatically drafted out of your bank, right? Like it's just an auto pay every month. You really need to make sure that once you verify that that new servicer is your actual servicer moving forward, set up your payment so that that person's getting paid, so you're not getting dinged for late payments or
Right.
not making payments at all.
Yeah.
Or God forbid, sending the payment to the wrong place, and who knows what happens to it after that.
Yeah. No.
But it's important to know that even though your servicer is changing and who you're paying is changing and how you pay might even change, there are some things that don't change about your payment. And what are some of those things?
So, well, just to kind of recap on what is in your payment, you're paying towards your principal, your interest, your taxes, and your insurance. So the principal is the amount that we have agreed to loan to you to purchase this home. The interest is the interest we are collecting so that we can loan you this money. And then your taxes deal with your property taxes. Your insurance is your homeowner's insurance, just to give a recap about what that looks like as a part of your monthly payment. Another thing to note on is when you get to the closing table, typically you have your folder from the title company of all the documents you've signed and whatnot. And in that folder are called mortgage coupons. And it's kind of funny because one of the last settlements I was at, somebody thought that was like a discount or something.
Boy. Yeah, that's a terrible name for it.
Yeah, right? But that's why. No, they're not discounts. It's literally just when you close on your home, before we figure out if your loan's getting serviced, who it's getting serviced to, you've got these coupons so that you can make your mortgage payment. It tells you exactly what your payment's going to be. It tells you who you can make your payment to, how you can do it. It's just kind of like a safe coupon so that you can pay your mortgage until you figure out who you're being serviced to or if you're staying with us type of thing. To kind of clarify about monthly payment, and it might be changing type of thing. So your escrow accounts, we collect your property taxes and your insurance up front, and we put it into an escrow account so that when you get the bill, whenever that may be, twice a year, we have money collected so that we can pay it for you. So while it is part of your monthly mortgage payment, we do have an account set up on the side so that we can help you pay that when they become due. So Tim, let's say that let's say property taxes go up and we didn't collect enough as a mortgage company in your escrow accounts. What happens? What in that situation? What would the borrower need or the past client need to be looking out for?
So that happens a lot more frequently than you probably think it does. I've had a mortgage with the same company for years and years and years, and seems like every year, but it's probably every 2 or 3 years something increases, right? It's either insurance or property taxes, and it's a good sign. Property taxes going up means your property is valued more, so you're building equity. But let's say your property taxes go up. Let's say they increase like $300 a year, right? So the mortgage servicer is going to send the client a letter stating, hey, your payment is set to increase, because something has increased, and you can go look at it and figure out whether it's insurance or taxes or maybe even both, who knows. But they'll give you two options. They'll say you can either pay the difference up front. So let's say it's like $300. You have the option to pay $300 up front to bridge that gap and keep your payment the same for the next 12 months. Or we are going to add, $40 a month or something like that to your monthly payment starting, next month or the month after, to make up for that difference in your property taxes. Because essentially what happens is your mortgage company, your mortgage servicer is going to pay the property taxes and the homeowner's insurance regardless of whether or not the money is actually in that account.
Right.
If it is, that's great. You're good to go. But if it's not, if they're paying more than the money that is actually in there, they're going to ask you to pay them back the difference for that. And so you're either going to have to do that in a one-time lump sum up front, or you're going to have to pay it monthly through the course of your natural monthly payments.
Yeah, because we don't want to show a shortage in that account.
No. Yeah. No. And so that's just something to be aware of. A lot of people buy a house and they're like, okay, I'm comfortable with this payment. Well, one of the conversations that I think we have to have with people is, you are comfortable with the payment right now, but there's a chance that it goes up at some point in the future. It's not meant to be a scare tactic, but it's meant to be hey, this is real, this is legitimate, this could potentially happen, and it almost always does. So it's a good conversation to have with someone, because I don't think that everybody out there is having conversations
no.
If somebody's buying at the top end of their budget and they're barely qualifying, that's kind of scary, not just because they're in that position, but for the future, unless you have some kind of, I know I'm going to make so much more money, in a year or 2 years when I get that promotion or I finish school or whatever it is, it's hard to know exactly where you're going to be financially, and knowing that these things could happen down the line. Your property taxes could increase, your homeowner's insurance could increase, and they likely will. It's good to know going forward.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Totally.
And so when it comes to, mortgage servicing and getting a mortgage and things like that, there's essentially two markets. There's a primary mortgage market and a secondary mortgage market. The primary mortgage market is what most people are familiar with. That's what we do, right? Like, people are out there looking for a mortgage. They call ABC Mortgage, they call First Home Mortgage, they call a credit union. They start talking to different representatives saying, hey, what can you do for me? What can you offer? So we just do the best that we can to educate people and say, here are what your options are. Hopefully they decide that they want to work with us. And that's what the primary mortgage market is. It's finding someone to supply the money to give you a mortgage. Mm-hmm. The secondary mortgage market is, it's kind of like the wizard in the Wizard of Oz, right? He's like behind this curtain pulling levers, and you don't really know what's going on. You just think that you see what is happening. But really what happens is, like, the secondary mortgage market is it is a bunch of like hedge funds and investors and, large corporate servicers that are, buying and selling these mortgages back and forth. And it's a necessary part of the way that the system works, because if we are going to, if we at First Home are going to do mortgages, we cannot possibly service all of the mortgages that we have. What we really need to do at some point is we need to sell some of those mortgages, make some of that money so we can continue to lend elsewhere. And this happens all over the place in the secondary markets, and it's like its own little marketplace just for buying and selling mortgages. Because there are like, let's just say like hedge funds and servicers out there that want a steady stream of income. And so they know that through the course of, years, they're going to be getting the monthly payments for these mortgages, and they're making some money on the interest. And as long as we're not in an environment like we were in 2020 and 2021, where rates are just completely falling every day, every day it was like rates are lower than they were the day before. Yeah. There's not going to be a ton of refinancing activity. And so a lot of those servicers, those investors, those hedge funds, they have this money coming in each month, and that allows them to go do something else with that money. Yeah. They can invest it elsewhere. They can make money for their investors elsewhere. And so that's what the secondary mortgage market is. It's basically just a marketplace that's available for just the buying and selling of mortgages, so that larger companies and corporate entities can make money and use that money to go do the other things that they need to do to carry on their day-to-day business.
That sounds about right.
It's so confusing. It's a lot.
It can be.
And it's not our specialty, but that's just kind of the 2-minute version of what happens and how it goes down on the back end of things. Yeah. I would say that there's been a lot of like mergers and acquisitions over the last few years. So if you're listening to this and you've had, a mortgage with, First Home or, JP Morgan Chase or Bank of America, and it was subserviced by another company, that company could very well have been bought or sold. And then you receive something in the mail that says you're going to somewhere else. It has nothing to do with you. It has nothing to do with like your payment. This isn't like a personal thing. It's just
a loan or any of that.
Yeah. It has almost nothing to do with you at all. It is just the natural course of doing business. And I know that's kind of frustrating to people sometimes, because they're like, well, I never know who I'm going to be paying next.
Right. Yeah.
But it's an unfortunate byproduct of the way that the system is designed.
Yeah. It's like one of the first questions that get asked. It's, at least for me at settlement, like, are you holding the loan? Is it getting serviced? Yeah. And it feels like a weird topic to talk about, but that's just literally what the industry is kind of doing and has been doing. So, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So we kind of talked about like what makes up a mortgage payment, and a little bit about the secondary mortgage market, but what are some other things outside of like the standard payment that people could be thinking about? Yeah.
So we kind of still do this, but we used to do this heavily a couple years ago. So you have something called an amortization schedule, and it literally starts from your first payment to your last payment for your 30-year loan, assuming you got a 30-year loan. And it breaks down your principal and interest payments. And it just basically shows you each payment, this is what you're paying, this is how much of a balance you have left on your mortgage. And as you get closer to the finish line, you're going to kind of notice that you're paying more towards your principal than you are towards interest. So it's a good thing to kind of follow and look at if you're, I have one for my house. I literally highlight every month that I make a mortgage payment, and I know I'm getting closer to that bottom line. Awesome. So this is something that, again, we usually send anyway, but it's definitely something that we have. If you as a client want it, or you want to see yours and kind of just follow it as you're making your mortgage payments. So to kind of follow the amortization schedule, what happens if you decide that you want to make an extra payment one month because you got a bonus at work, or maybe you came into some money and you want to make a few extra payments? That's totally fine. There's nothing wrong with doing that. But it is important to know that if you do make extra payments towards your mortgage payment, that amortization schedule just goes out the window. It's
completely worthless.
Yeah, it's a moot point at that point, because you're now making an extra payment, so it shifts the schedule and it shifts the principal and it shifts the interest, it shifts everything. So you'd have to either get a new one to kind of follow, or just go with that. So. Yeah. So in order to make an extra payment, you can't just say, I'm sending in Tim a check for an extra $500. Here you go, Tim. Do with it what you will. Like, you have to contact the servicer, whoever that might be, and you have to let them know, hey, I'm making an extra a mortgage payment to my mortgage. Can you please apply it? And they will go ahead and do that for you. And then everything will reflect after that. So let's say you wanted to pay off your loan early, which I've never had anybody do that, but that doesn't mean that it's not a thing, and people do that. So as long as you let the servicer know that that's what you're doing, again, you can't just be sending in random amounts of money and hoping that they know what that means or what that goes towards. But basically, they're going to give you a payoff statement. Yep. So they're going to let you know, hey, this is what the balance is left on your mortgage. They give you a couple instructions on how you can do that actual payoff. And then they release the lien, meaning that you no longer have a lien on your home, which would be the mortgage. Yep. And it's fun, and you can celebrate after that because it is exciting. I mean, you paid off a huge debt. So you absolutely can get information on what your schedule looks like to make your mortgage payments. You can make extra payments. You can pay off your loan early if you want to. It's all just kind of what money you've got going on, and how you want to apply it towards this specific debt.
Yes.
Yeah. But there are important documents as well that we kind of have other than amortization schedules. And yeah. Tim, I feel like you can touch on that for us.
I can. All right. So probably the document that most people are the most familiar with is the monthly mortgage statement, right? Like, it tells you what your balance is, it tells you all the things about your interest rate, the type of loan that you have, again, what your balance is, maybe even tells you what your original balance was, so you can kind of see how much you paid down. Breaks down your payment. Here's how much goes toward principal and interest. Here's how much goes toward property taxes. Here's how much goes toward insurance. And it's a good thing to have because it has a lot of really important information, and it tells you about your mortgage. So it's really funny in my experience. Everybody talks about, hey, I want to get the best mortgage rate I could possibly get, and 2 months later, most people don't remember what their rate is. Right. I can't tell you how many people call me to refinance and say, hey, you helped me with my mortgage a couple years ago. I don't know where my rate is now, but I've heard rates are lower. Right. Well, it's really funny because a lot of those people are the same people that called me years before, and they're like, I want the absolute lowest interest rate you could possibly give me. And I think it's just a there and then kind of thing. Maybe like a dinner conversation you have with your neighbors at some point at a cookout at the 4th of July. Be like, oh yeah, I got that 6.5% interest rate. What did you get? And I think it's just about bragging rights, but I think it's psychologically people don't remember what that is. But right. that's one of the things that's on your mortgage statement, so it's a helpful reminder where you are. It's also something that Tanner and I track. So when we think it makes sense to refinance, we definitely reach out to clients and say, hey, here's where you are now. Here's where rates are. Here's what your payment is now. Here's what your payment could be. So it's a good barometer to use to figure out whether or not refinancing makes sense.
Yeah.
Also, you're going to get an escrow analysis every year, and that essentially just takes a look at what your property taxes were over the course of the last year, what your new property tax bill is coming out. For instance, we're in Maryland, so a new property tax bill comes out tomorrow, July 1st. Yay. So that'll be fun and exciting. We're going to get a ton of phone calls from people that say, hey, I just got this bill in the mail. What am I supposed to do with it?
Right.
And we'll answer the way we always do. And so, you get once a year, your mortgage servicer will go through and look at, how much was your homeowner's insurance last year? What is it going to be next year? How much are your property taxes last year? How much are they going to be this upcoming year? And, sort of figure out, kind of like we were talking about, if you're going to fall short in that escrow account in the upcoming year, you will get a letter that lets you know that, and you'll be given the options to pay it up front or over the course of the year. So that's an escrow analysis. Every year at tax time, you're going to get a 1098. And 1098 is a form that lets you and the Internal Revenue Service know how much interest and property taxes that you have paid over the course of the last year that you could potentially deduct. If you do the standard deduction on your property, on your yearly taxes, on your federal taxes, you're not going to use your 1098. It's not going to play a part in it. But if you itemize your deductions, it's something that you'll definitely want to have before you do the taxes. Obviously, consult a tax professional to figure out which one of those courses is the best for you. And like Tanner mentioned, you get a payoff. If you want to pay off your loan or you want to refinance your loan, a lot of times, one of us or someone on our team or someone at the title company or maybe even the client themselves will reach out and get a copy of the payoff from their servicer. One thing a lot of people don't know is that when you get your monthly statement each month with your mortgage statement, it has a balance that you owe on it, but that's not exactly your payoff. Different loans have different ways that they calculate interest and other fees. And so a payoff includes whatever your principal balance is, whatever amount of interest is due. For instance, FHA loans collect interest over the course of a month. And so there's always 30 days of interest built into an FHA payoff, whereas a conventional loan just collects it by the day. And so if you were paying off a conventional loan, you wouldn't be paying the full month of interest. You'd be paying interest from, up until the day that you close and disperse that loan. So just because you see something on your monthly statement that tells you what your balance is, that's not necessarily the full payoff. It's going to be pretty close. But the actual payoff is going to be more accurate because the fees and the interest that are accruing are going to be calculated for that. When you close on a loan, you get kind of inundated with a lot of paperwork. There's a lot of things that could potentially be coming in the mail. What are some of those things?
Well, I'm going to touch on the Homestead credit first because that seems to be the exciting thing that everybody, well, not everybody knows about it, but some people ask about it. So the Homestead tax credit, it literally is a credit or almost a cap for your property taxes. So it's something you have to apply to get, and it's online. It's through the state website. And basically, it gives you a certain amount of a credit towards your property taxes, or it caps it at the amount that it's almost not allowed to be going up. You know what I mean? Yeah. I'm trying to find a way to describe that the right way. But so, and it's something for first-time home buyers. If you've never purchased a home before, I'm pretty sure it's not something where, let's say Tim owned a home, he sold it, it's been 3 years, which designates you a first-time home buyer again. I'm pretty sure that the next home that you purchase, you can't be applying for a homestead credit, from what I understand now. I'll double check myself on that, but I'm pretty sure. It's something that you can apply for after your mortgage. So that's something that I note. It's something the title company notes typically when they're talking as well at the settlement table. I mention it again in my follow-up email with the website. So again, it's something that you definitely want to get involved in if you're a first-time home buyer and you haven't applied for it. If you decide that you want to refinance, that's a good way to get a lower interest rate. It's a good way to take cash out if you're looking to do some upgrades to your home or pay off some debt. So that's something that you can look into after you've made a few mortgage payments. You can do that with typically any loan type that you have. And then PMI, I like to just call it mortgage insurance. Right. So with FHA, we all know that has mortgage insurance for the life of the loan. So you can't necessarily buy it down, pay it off, wrap it into your closing costs or your mortgage itself. With conventional loans, though, once it reaches 20% equity, you're able to request that your mortgage insurance be dropped. And at 22% equity, it completely just drops off. So that's something that kind of makes your mortgage payment decrease a little bit, which is always good news. Awesome. I like to tell people about that. Accessing equity. Can't talk this morning.
Having access
to. Yeah. So if you wanted to do something like a cash out refinance, that's something where you can tap into the equity that you have in your home. Now, I want to jump back. You have to make sure you have equity in your home first. And that's something that can be done through an appraisal or something along those lines. But once you know you have equity in the house, you can do a cash out refinance, take it cash out, and do whatever you want with it. Like I said, pay off debt, do some upgrades. Or we have something in-house that's called a home equity loan of credit. Yep. And that basically taps into the equity as well and allows you to do things with the equity that you're pulling out. So those are two good options if you need some money to be doing stuff with. And then, selling your house. So let's say you own your house for a certain amount of time and then you wanted to go ahead and sell it. When you do sell your house, it gets paid off at the closing table. Yes. So that's something that is always exciting. Typically, if someone's selling their house, they're looking to purchase a new one. So you might be wrapping yourself in a new mortgage, which is fine. But yeah, selling your house is definitely a next step action if you choose to do so.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. And while you were talking about, watching out for stuff in the mail and emails and all that stuff, why don't you give us some examples of what that looks like? Because I've gotten them and I don't know why I've gotten them, but
it's ridiculous. Yeah. So you do get a lot of junk mail once everything rolls around, and almost every settlement I go to, the person that's conducting the settlement, the title agent, talks about things you're going to be getting in the mail, and how it's junk and disregard it. And one of those is there are a lot of people out there that will try to take advantage of the fact that you're a homeowner. So when you buy a home, the fact that you bought a home becomes public record. Your full legal name, your address, what kind of financing you use, that kind of stuff all goes into public record, at least here in the state of Maryland. And so one of the things that people do to try to get some money out of you is they'll offer to send you a copy of your deed for like $89 or whatever. You don't ever have to pay for that, at least here in the state of Maryland. We have a Maryland Land Records website where everybody's deed gets recorded, and you can have the ability to actually go in and pull your own deed if you wanted. You could pull, I pull clients' deeds all the time when I'm working on refinances and stuff. So you don't have to pay for it. It's something, you're paying the title company a lot of money throughout the course of the process of buying a house. And one of the services that they offer is they're going to send you a copy of your actual deed, the one that you hand signed, once it's recorded in the land records. And so you're eventually going to get that copy. You don't have to pay for it. But it is definitely something that a lot of people, they will call us and say, hey, I just got this in the mail. Is this legitimate or is this junk? And they'll usually, it's a text or an email, and they'll send a picture with it too, and we'll be able to determine whether or not it's legitimate. Look out for escrow surprises. Again, you're going to have an escrow analysis performed. Your servicer is going to let you know what it is that you need to do. I had a client recently, just last year, who was buying a house that was, according to the county that they bought in, it was valued at one thing, and they were buying it for almost twice as much. And so what that tells you is that the county hasn't reevaluated what that property is worth for quite a while. And so in an effort to prevent that from becoming a surprise in the future, next year or the following year, when the county eventually, because the county wants their money, so they're going to reevaluate, and they're going to find out that your property is worth more than what you paid for it. They're going to reassess the value of your home, and you're going to pay property taxes based on that. So I had a client, and I talked to our closing department and the title company, and we determined, these property taxes are egregiously low. They need to be higher. And so, between our closing department and the title company, came up with a number that said, hey, this is probably what your property will be valued at. Therefore, this is what your property taxes probably will be starting next year. And we're actually going to find out, like in the next couple of weeks, how close we were to that. But the idea was, hey, let's actually collect more money than what the property tax bill would indicate you should. And one of the this guy, that the client, he was not thrilled that we were collecting more money, but he was incredibly appreciative that we weren't just looking to make a fast buck and move on to the next client. It was, hey, a year from now, you're going to have this problem, or a year, 2 years from now, you may have this problem. Let's address it now so it doesn't become a really large problem. It doesn't become like a, hey, you owe us $4,000 problem. It's a, over the course of a year, let's slowly phase it in kind of thing. And so, that doesn't always happen, but in the cases that it does, it's good. But when it doesn't, you're going to get that escrow letter in the mail that tells you, hey, you are short, or you're going to be short in your escrow account. And then the other thing that you get in the mail, and this isn't a scam, it's not junk, but you get those hello and goodbye letters from servicers. Hey, it was great servicing your loan. We have sold your loan to ABC Mortgage. They're now going to be the servicer of your mortgage. And I know Tanner's like this too, but when our clients get that stuff in the mail, they're reaching out to us all the time. They're calling, they're texting, they're emailing, whatever it is that they need to do to get in touch with us to say, hey, I got this in the mail. I don't know if this is real. Is this legit?
Right.
And I think, having a little insight into how long we've been in the business, and hey, yes, this is something we could track down. We can reach out to our servicing department and find out who, did this loan get sold. And if it did, you can reach back out and reassure them, hey, yes, your loan was sold. It's all good. Follow the directions in that letter. If you need anything else, let us know. Yeah, it's legit. Like, it doesn't always happen that way. But, like the servicing part of this, the post-closing part, is not something that everybody has to deal with. It's not something we deal with all the time. Getting a home is hard enough for some people, right? It's a challenging enough experience. It is hard for some people. And the post-closing process isn't a whole lot easier,
right?
Because it's not really something that you go through very many times in your life.
I mean, we have a whole department that's designated to helping us with that. And when we do get the calls and the emails and the verification texts and all that stuff, like, we immediately go to our servicing department and we ask them, because we have a department that deals with that. I mean, it's a way bigger, I don't want to say issue, it's not an issue. It's a way bigger party than people think.
Yeah, it's like the after party, right?
Yeah, exactly. After
All right.
party.
Well, we hope that you learned a lot today. There's a lot of good info. We probably missed some stuff, but if you have any questions at any time, Tanner and I are here to help you. So just reach out to us, call, text, email, whatever's easiest for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Always available.
Yeah, always available. And then we'll come back at you next week with a new episode.
Yep.
All right, talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.